Now, one of the things we hear very often associated with Agile is self-organizing teams and the role of a Scrum Master as a servant leader. But there needs to be a lot more to it than that, I think, in my experience. Now, this essay by Jo Freeman, this came out in 1970, and she was a women's activist, and she wrote, "There is no such thing as a structureless group. Any group of people, any group of people of whatever nature that comes together for any length of time, for any purpose, will inevitably structure itself in some fashion. Structurelessness becomes a way of making power. As long as the structure of the group is informal, the rules of how decisions are made are known only to a few, and awareness of power is limited to those who know the rules." Now, the manifesto's statement about self-organization is a rejection of autocratic micromanagement. And we can all agree that that is not a good thing and doesn't help anybody accomplish much of anything. Self-organization, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily fix the problem because a structure will emerge that could be harmful. So what we need are the right people in the right leadership roles. And when I say roles here, I mean it very loosely. I don't mean necessarily in a formal title or a formal position with official representation in some org chart, but that the groups have the right type of leadership that they need for the circumstances, and that someone in the system is paying attention to the need for this kind of open approach to leadership, and making sure not that you have a certain type of leadership or that you have an individual who's in charge. Instead, it's more the idea of someone who understands these different aspects of leadership and ensures that squads have what they need. Now, one of Agile 2's principles is that good leaders are open. And that means that leaders need to listen before they give orders, if they ever give orders at all. Good leaders actually rarely give orders, because just because you have authority doesn't mean you actually use it. You may not use it much at all or very sparingly, because people really need agency over how they do their work. That's how you unleash their creativity. But when issues arise that transcend the team, that no one on the team, because of the circumstances of the larger system, is able to address, then a good leader knows how to deal with those issues and how to get the team the support that it needs. A good leader will take these larger circumstances into account and will also be thinking about issues that might be internal just to that team. All right, frameworks, talked a little bit about that earlier, so I won't say too much here. But the core idea of Agile 2 regarding frameworks is that they all need to be tailored for the circumstances, and that implementing frameworks out of the box without tailoring them or thinking about how they suit, or for that matter, changing what you do over time, because you might, if you're brand new, you might implement something right out of the box at the beginning because you're just getting started, but then as you work with it over time, you realize maybe we can adjust this or can adjust that to something that's going to be more effective for you. So the real question here is what's going to work well for you, not so much following a set of rules. They can be a good starting point, and if you're getting great results and everyone's really happy, by all means, stick with what you're doing. You don't need to change just for change's sake, but to be open to the idea that you might need to adjust your frameworks as you go along. All right. Agile 2 ideas around workflow align really closely with Lean. Things that slow us down really harm us. And we need to be alert all the time for causes for delay and to address them. I think I talked a little bit about this already, which is this idea of having both technical fluency and business fluency in the organization, and especially in the leadership. I think it's self-evident to people who are actually in the weeds working with tech or are in tech leadership It's self-evident that business people need to understand what is going on. But sometimes I think business leaders think that they can effectively outsource managing all the tech. And when they do that, they can sometimes continue to make decisions and devise strategies and make demands of their teams that completely contradict the things that the tech teams need in order to be successful. And that kind of speaks to that one comment somebody wrote earlier about DevOps teams not being implemented properly. It's like, well, the business leaders, whoever is responsible, has the authority and the money to pay all these people, because DevOps engineers are not cheap, needs to understand what they're doing enough to deploy them effectively. Okay, and planning and transformation. Most of our ideas around, all of our ideas around transformation are pretty common sense, especially if you're an engineer or you're an expert in DevOps. It's easy to lose sight of the conditions needed for bringing about change in an organization. So if you happen to be in an organization that's transforming, and by that I mean they have some kind of formal and official transformation effort going on, then it's important for everyone in the organization to be willing to learn, because really a transformation is a learning journey, and it doesn't really happen through a step-by-step process. It happens more of a deeper change in the heart, where people learn to see things differently and to think differently, and they're open to new ideas. And that takes some time, and it takes a lot of, I don't want to say education, but learning. Like people, sometimes it's self-directed learning. People need to do their own research. But most of the time what it means is running small experiments, trying things out, seeing how it works, taking blame out of the equation, being able to learn from our experiments and learn from our failures, and ensure that the top leadership is on board with this concept so that they don't inadvertently undermine the learning in their organization by any kind of subtle or not so subtle punishments of people who run experiments and fail, right? When you try something out and it doesn't work, then you've learned from it. And the idea with Agile is you, and DevOps to some extent, you try small experiments. You don't try great big experiments that are going to cause a catastrophe if they fail. You run small experiments and you learn as you go, and then you apply that learning and you share that learning. And that learning process, it doesn't happen in organization where there's a lot of blame. And so you need to take blame out of the equation and create a healthy environment. And finally, Agile 2 really focuses on people as individuals and as humans, and also as part of a team. Like one of the most common complaints I hear is that there are just too many meetings. I talked about that a little earlier. I've even heard some engineers say that they have to work nights and weekends just to get their essential work done because their days are just too full of meetings. They can't get anything done. And I mean, I think that's just completely crazy. I mean, people require sufficient focus time to do their work and really concentrate on the very difficult problems that they're trying to solve. So Agile 2 principles around people tend to emphasize the need for focus time, for flow, for people to be able to really feel valued as individuals, supported in their career development, supported in their growth and learning, and for them to be able to experiment, like I said before, without blame, so that there's an environment of psychological safety. And this is how it is that we get the best creativity and, by the way, the best productivity, right? And wonderful things can happen with teams of individuals who are supported in this way. I've seen it happen. All right. So this is the slide I mentioned before. You can go to agile2.net and learn more about how we came up with the principles and the ideas behind them. There's a conversation on LinkedIn, and there's a link here to the book, which is on Amazon if you want to find out more about it. Okay.